welcome to the Las Vegas Connection. I'm Bart Torres, and this is a show where you are on the Vegas A-list. But today, in this show in particular, we're going to be taking you down a little different path. As a matter of fact, we're going to take you undercover with our good friend. His name is Jack Garcia. And Rich, I got to talk to our producer about this a little bit because I don't even think you know who we have on today.
No.
If I say Jack Garcia, that probably doesn't really ring a bell with you.
I don't know anybody named Garcia. Maybe one or two people.
But everyone knows a Garcia out there, don't they? I mean, it's like a Torres. Where there's a lot of them.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. But when it comes to Jack Garcia, what we're talking about, Rich, in fact, he has some similarities to you in a way.
How's that?
Well, he portrays a Sicilian, an Italian. And I know you don't portray one, you are one, but what I'm talking about here is a gentleman that was in the F.B.I. He was in the undercover world of the F.B.I. He had to retire after this giant case that blew wide open. He's actually responsible for taking down the heads of the Gambino crime family.
That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
Garcia taking down the Gambino crime family?
Right. It gets even more interesting, and he's on the line. So you know what a huge fan I am, and again, thanks so much for being with us, Jack.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I mean, it's an honor to be here with you. I've heard so many great things about you, Bart.
Well, thank you, and likewise, Jack. And, you know, this is a real treat. I know you don't do a lot of interviews, and I can't tell you how much we're looking forward to this. And, you know what I'd like to start with is right at the beginning, Jack Falcone. It's your creation, and it was pretty important that you didn't screw this up at all. Tell us about who Jack Falcone really is.
Okay, great. Well, Jack Falcone was created actually in around the year 2001. I have been an agent for 26 years, and 24 of those years was solely dedicated to working undercover. Now, I worked over my career I'd say about 100 cases, but here was this particular case, and I was approached to infiltrate the Gambino crime family, and we had known that these people are by nature very distrustful, so we had to create this whole history, and even including the name Jack Falcone. And I took the name Falcone as a tribute to Judge Giovanni Falcone, who in Sicily was assassinated by the mafia. So I did it as a kind of a tribute to him, but in hindsight, it kind of haunted me throughout the operation because as I was meeting bad guys, they would question me if I had any relationship because I was playing the role of a third-generation Sicilian.
This is wild. Okay, stop right there for a moment because this is amazing to me because from what I understand, you're not even Italian, and you were born in Cuba, according to your book. So, I mean, how does a gentleman from Cuba not only, you know, infiltrate the mob and pretend he's Sicilian, but how do you actually get away with that and convince the mob?
Well, you know, I asked myself the same very question when I was approached to do this undercover. And it is true, I was born in Havana, Cuba, and I came to this country when I was 9 years old and became a citizen when I was 26 years old. So go figure. But you know what it is, I grew up in New York, in the Bronx, and I guess I have that New York type of manner of speaking and attitude. And but I really felt very uncomfortable because pretty much all my career was utilizing my gift of being able to speak Spanish fluently. So all of a sudden they approached me and I said, okay, but I got to do a lot of research in order I go on to take this particular role. So the case agent at the time, he was an Italian-American, is Italian-American, his name is Nat Parisi. He put me through this like self-made mob school.
I heard about this. I've heard about this a number of times, the self-made mob school. So what's that like? And I mean, do you ever really feel like you graduated?
Yeah, well, you know what? You're right. And it was like basically for about a good month or two, it was total immersion about what the mob world was all about. Because, again, my experience was dealing with narco traffickers. So here I am involved with, and even though the mobsters are also narco traffickers, but here I am in the opportunity to infiltrate the mob. So it consisted of totally reviewing all former cases, talking to former CWs, cooperating witnesses, and spending a lot of time watching the Food Channel. I mean, I had to learn because I was posing myself as a third-generation Sicilian.
Yes.
So I was kind of an Americanized Italian. So I had to learn, like I grew up in at least an Italian home, and I got to be able to say, manicotti, not manicati, and I got to pronounce the words, right. It isn't bracioli is braciole,
Wow.
So I would have to mean like I grew up in the culture and I ate the food. And then, of course, I went from being a Cuban American where I love black beans and rice and pork. I had to go to like heavy duty pastas and all, which don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. But it just opened up a whole new world of eating for me as well. But I felt pretty comfortable with, preparation of food, talking about the right way, saying things, and also how to behave while you're around mobsters. I mean, the mobsters are very distrustful by nature, especially from a guy who didn't grow up as a kid in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I was a new kid on the block. Fortunately, I had a pretty good, cooperator who kind of led me in to the lion's den, so to speak. And, it was the constant schooling, how to learn, what not to say. And it is a little difficult because in the mob, being this secret society, is what the boss says it is. So if the guy that I wound up being very close with was the captain of the Gambinos by the name of Greg De Palma, when he called me and if he says to me, listen, bring your umbrella today because it's going to rain, and I look out the window and it's a sunny sky, I better show up with an umbrella because it's going to rain because he said it was going to rain.
There's no gray area when they talk.
The mob guys, that's the way it is. There's you have to show them deference. You got to show them respect, and that's something that in their world they believe and live by.
So going back to the mob school, okay, you said you watched and you studied Italian chefs on the Food Channel. Now, the attention to detail must have been insane. I recall also from your book that you said that the way they carry their money is a lot different than the way guys like us carry our money.
Yeah, that was very interesting because, mobsters don't walk around with wallets. They don't have credit cards because every credit card they got, they busted it out, and they never paid anything. So we found out that everybody carries this knot or this roll, but they call it a knot, and in it they wrap it with rubber bands. But the real high rubber band that they used was the broccoli band because it was a little thicker. So the sign of a successful mobster was how big the knot was in your pocket. So, and it was funny because on 60 Minutes, they took out this little tiny knot that kind of made me look like a brokester, not an earner. When I was out there, I carried maybe $5,000, and it would be a big, huge roll. Now I'm walking around with a couple of $2, $3 bills,
So you would have been given away immediately if you were using props from 60 Minutes.
Exactly. So a lot of these guys carry the money. It's kind of thing that, of course, everything is licensed out of state or it's expired. There's absolutely no credit card. Who will give credit to a mobster unless it's a loan shark, Yeah, so that was kind of like the part thing, the way you dress, the manicures, the pedicures, being groomed, no facial hair, the clothing all had to be Italian silk suits and, talking zinnias, briones. But, everything was custom made. But my size, I'm a 64 large for crying out loud. So, Italian zinnias may go up to maybe a 48, luckily stretching it. So I had a lot of suits that were made. But, your car has to be spotless, and it's just the whole image thing.
So, Jack, when you were not on the job and when you were posing as a mafia member, like when do you actually get to go home? And when do you actually go get to see your wife and your family?
Well, what happens in undercover work, there's long-term cases, cameos, short-terms. This was a long-term case. That means I have my own apartment in New York City. I was away from my family pretty much a lot of the holidays. I lived around these guys 24/7, 365. However, I was lucky that I was still working other cases, but that gave me the excuse because the mob is all about making money. So I would say, listen, I'm going down to Florida to hook up with some guys about doing a deal. So I fly down to Florida, and there I'm doing a police corruption investigation that I was involved. Or I'm going to Atlantic City, I got some things that are happening. So then I go to Atlantic City, I'm working in Asian organized crime, and I'm also working political corruption out there where we took down the city council president. So what happens is I would come back, and I have to give these guys a taste of money. So, being in the Bureau, we have a lot of resources, a lot of forfeiture jewelry and stuff, and I would come back and say, look, we made a deal, and we scored such, these things. Here's a token, a tribute to you. Yes. And, of course, they would sell it. But it's all about making money. If I didn't generate money for these guys, I certainly would not be able to be in their company.
Interesting. So you came in as an earner, and then you built your trust with them as that earner.
That is correct. I played the role that I was raised in Florida, and even went as far as when you talked about my family and taking the name, I went down in Florida because I wanted to make sure my I's were dotted, my T's were crossed. I found a cemetery in Miami that contained a Mr. and Mrs. Falcone. Wow. And that would be my parents. In the event, we went down there, and picture this, you're out with these guys, and they said, maybe one of the guys questions you. It's because, hey, Jackie boy, you're from this area, right? What happened to your parents? Well, they passed away. Really, let's go pay our respects. What are you going to do then?
The amount of detail. Wow, Jack. I mean, the amount of detail that you must have had to bring to this. And this was like life and death.
Exactly.
It's masterful.
Because if you don't, you're going to get hurt. And that's the issue. And also, being the mob, they was infiltrated many years ago with Joe Pistone and Donnie Brasco. Their antennas are always up for strangers. So I wanted to make sure every little aspect was covered, because once that you drew that suspicion about you, then you're pretty much doomed. But luckily for me, I was able to, win them over, I guess, with my charm. I mean, working undercover was an adrenaline rush. I mean, it's no greater feeling than being there with the bad guy, and you're looking at him, and you're toasting one another, and you're knowing that he bought your stuff, he bought your act. Doesn't come any better than that.
This is truly like the ultimate Academy Award story. And again, I mentioned it. It's life or death, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was a great interview, Jack. Absolutely fascinating. Now, I've got one last question. When you walk into a casino, let's take right here, this town, Las Vegas, perfect for this question. You probably are like a radar detector. Can you tell who's a mobster just by looking at him? Or can you tell a wise guy like, oh, it's that guy over there, he's got to be one, right?
Well, you know what? You're right. You could always pick these guys out, if not guys who, maybe not the main guys, they're a little more discreet, but certainly, as I call them, mafia groupies, they're out there. Guys that want to be like knock-around guys, and it's funny, the way it is, and just the way people carry themselves, and it's a tremendous subculture. I mean, it's one that it really needs to be studied, because, and especially if you're like in New York area where you have, 18th Avenue in Brooklyn, and you got Arthur Avenue, and all these are, even Harlem has a very big and pleasant avenue. It had really traditionally for years a big Italian mob families that are there. So, it's kind of when you see them, I kind of chuckle at them, and, it's always at the end, I kind of laugh and say, hey, you know what? I scammed you guys. You're fooling nobody, My wife always gets a little mad at me when we go out. She says, you're trying to act like a mobster, and, like I'll go in for a reservation, and the guy puts me, like, go to the bar and have a drink. Well, when I was out there in the streets, there was no such thing as that. Tables became available for me. Now I get put in the pay me no mind list in the restaurant,
What a great interview. It's been such a pleasure talking with you, Jack.
Likewise, too, Bart. No, absolutely. Listen, I'm in town. If you want to get together, just give a shout out. I'd love to see you. I heard great things about you and your show, and what an honor for me to be here, and I'm so excited, and I'm so looking forward to seeing Las Vegas.
I would love to do that, Jack. Let's do it for sure. Let's meet up. And that's Jack Garcia, a.k.a. Jack Falcone. Do yourself a favor. Pick up his must-read book, The Making of Jack Falcone. And I got to tell you, that's some inside stuff. And you only find it here on the Las Vegas Connection.